Do you read the comments?
Never.
And not looking at reader feedback is probably a wise decision if you're New York Times columnist Maureen Dowd.
I'm always making one side or the other angry. I'm really shy and kind of introverted, but when I write, it has to be a tougher part of myself because that's my job.
And her job this presidential campaign has been hitting both sides hard. She's excoriated Hillary Clinton for her long pattern of ethical slipping and sliding. As for Donald Trump and his performance in last Wednesday's debate,
my Social Security payroll contribution will go up, as will Donald's, assuming he can't figure out how to get out of it. But what we want to do is to replenish the Social Security Trust Fund.
The fact that she was able to goad him into calling her a nasty woman when she was discussing the intricacies of Social Security and taxes was a triumph of psychological warfare.
Dowd's new book, The Year of Voting Dangerously, includes many of her columns and none of those comments.
Do you not read the comments because you think they'd hurt your feelings?
Oh, they would hurt my feelings. When I was little, I was so overly sensitive, and I actually thought that if someone said something mean to you, it would get in your bloodstream and it would be like leukemia and you would die.
She may not read her comments, but Peggy Dowd does, always at the ready to stick up for her little sister.
No one better say anything to me about Maureen. I read all of her comments.
And
I get very angry sometimes.
It's like being in a Godfather movie. You take one of theirs, they take one of yours, you go to the mattresses.
This is Dowd's 9th presidential campaign. But this time around, she says, the national mood is uniquely terrible.
There have been a lot of stories that couples are breaking up all over the country.
a friend of mine, his wife said to him, they've been married for over 20 years, she said, seriously, if you vote for Trump, I will divorce you.
Right.
Have you ever seen anything like this?
No. People feel very intensely that if Donald Trump gets elected, we're going to have the zombie apocalypse. And then my siblings feel just as strongly that if Hillary gets in, there will be the abyss.
So he's sort of the, is this right, the law and order sibling?
That's right, Maureen's brother Kevin is a rock-ribbed Republican who occasionally takes over his sister's column to hurl slabs of red meat at her defenseless readers.
I particularly like the comments that come in afterwards.
So you read the comments.
Oh, I keep a scrapbook of them.
Yes, he's voting for Donald Trump.
Trump was not my first, second, or third choice, but Trump represents change.
And so does Maureen's sister Peggy. She embodies change.
We were Goldwater girls.
She cast her first vote for conservative Barry Goldwater, then made her way left with Jimmy Carter, then tacked right again for Reagan and both Bushes. This election, she's leaning Trump, but
She went to Cuba for a vacation and fell in love with Che Guevara and turned communist for 3 days. So anything can happen.
You're a pretty solid conservative, but you had this dalliance with communism.
And socialism.
When you were a Bernie Sanders
Right,
voter.
yeah,
But
And
okay.
you voted for Obama.
I did vote for Obama.
Maureen Dowd grew up the youngest of 5 in a tight-knit Irish Catholic family in Washington, D.C. Her father was a police inspector in charge of Senate security. He got to see the members of that august body in some of their less august moments.
He had the worm's eye view, so these politicians were not trying to impress him. And my brothers were pages there as well. They would see the nitty-gritty. They would see senators come in the morning drunk, and then other senators' wives would be calling, saying, where's my husband, you know, because there was a lot of hanky-panky in those days. So my father tended to judge politicians on whether they seemed to be good people, you know, rather than the party so much, although he was a Democrat.
Indeed, Dowd's column focuses less on policy and more on the person.
You've heard the charge that you and your legions of imitators, by focusing so much on character and personality, have trivialized the process.
I think it's just the reverse. Whenever America has had a trauma, whether it's Watergate or Vietnam or Iraq, if you look back, those decisions were made on the basis of the president's personality or personal demons.
Dowd met Donald Trump in the late 1980s and admitted early this campaign that covering him might mean he would send out one of his midnight mordant tweets about me. Something like, she started as a 3, now she's a 1.
I knew that he would cut me off because I would be honest, and he tweeted that I was a neurotic dope and I was wacky and crazy. So I was very hurt because I thought he could have come up with something much more customized, spent more time on it, like Elizabeth Warren has Pocahontas. So I was very hurt.
He could have done something like with the Irish, like about a banshee or something like that.
A banshee.
Yeah.
That would have been perfect.
She's been writing about the Clintons for 25 years, winning a Pulitzer for her commentary on the Lewinsky scandal and impeachment crisis.
Hillary has these two sides that are in conflict. So the dark side, where she's fearful and paranoid and secretive and has a lot of scar tissue from all these battles that she's fought and from her husband fighting his battles with the women who have come forward, trips up the light, idealistic side that she started with at Wellesley.
Her job, she says, is to give whoever's in power a hard time.
Even my family doesn't understand. When a Republican president is in, they don't talk to me for 4 or 8 years because they're mad that I'm critiquing. And then when a Democrat is in, they love it.
But her family is always her personal focus group.
All of my fellow Times columnists have been going on these Margaret Mead road trips. We're going to find this strange, exotic creature called a Trump voter and try and understand who they are and reason with them. When all I have to do is go home. They're my own little basket of deplorables.
And if this campaign is creating strife in some families, well, the Dowds are taking it in stride.
I've been married for 42 years to a registered Democrat. You ought to seek counseling if you can't sort this out.
I think there was more attention in our household when W was president.
I was almost a fanatic for him. If Maureen wrote any criticism of him, I just went nuts.
She canceled her New York Times subscription.
I did. After he got into the White House and years later, I thought, this is ridiculous. You know, if I'm dying, he isn't going to be at my bedside. Maureen will.